Hello and welcome to the Tweed Couch Guitar YouTube channel. Today we're going to get into this beautiful bass from 1953. This was the first production electric bass that Gibson ever did, and it's known as the EB-1. It wasn't originally called the EB-1, it was originally just called the electric bass. But in 1958 they started working on a second version, one that ended up looking more like a 335, and that one caused this one to have a name change. So it is referred to as the EB-1. As we look at it, you might think, Dr. T, that does not look like a color you would have seen in 1953. And you are correct, because this is actually one that got painted around 1966, 1967. I know the person who actually decided to get this painted. It originally was the color that was more like the neck. And the person who decided to go ahead and get this painted was my father. Now, guitars tell stories, and I love the story that this one tells, because my dad bought this in '65. He actually played with a band that did a lot of Beatle covers, and he was a person who played guitar, but they needed a bass player, and they knew he could play some bass. So we went over to the local guitar shop, which was over in Ames, Iowa, and they happened to have this bass sitting in a closet. They pulled out the brown leather case, they pulled out this guitar. They did not have the end pin part that goes in, because you could have played this thing upright, but no, it didn't have that with it anymore. And he looked at it and went, you know what? It'll do. So he went out, he played the guitar, but the drummer in the band had a white drum set. So he decided that he wanted to go ahead and have it painted to match the drum set. Now, before anybody gets real upset, remember back then, we're looking at a time where a lot of the band members would have matching guitars. Maybe they all had white, or maybe they all had sunburst, or maybe they were all seafoam green or something like that. So this is true to the time, and you know, you bought the thing for 75 bucks. Why not? About a year and a half later, they ended up getting a new drummer, and that drummer had a blue drum set. So he decided to go ahead and go to the local auto body shop, and that's where he had this color picked out, Chevy Marina Blue, covered in auto paint. It actually looks beautiful. Now, I mentioned that my dad got this because it was very Beatles looking, but he bought it in 1966, even though it is a 53, and Hofner didn't actually start making their violin shape until 55, and this is a 53. So really, it's more likely that this was an inspiration to Hofner in Germany, and then my dad was inspired by Hofner to buy a Gibson. That's a full circle thing. So what was this bass originally? Well, originally, as mentioned before, it's this color, but it had this black pinstriping. So there's white pinstriping on it now. It did end up having these painted in F-holes, so that's kind of fun. This cover should be brown, but it's not brown right now. And actually, this jack plate on the bottom part right here should not be metal. It should be brown as well, but they were prone for breaking. And so my guess is that this guy broke off and it ended up getting replaced. The knobs should have been originally brown, and this back plate should have been originally brown. Well, I know that this feels painted. When you look really close at these knobs, they look like they've been painted underneath. And of course, that looks like it's just been replaced. You might also notice that the bridge looks like it is really, really bright and really shiny, and which is unusual for a 53. And that's because my dad, while he had it in the auto body shop getting painted Chevy Marina blue, he went ahead and had them rechrome it. So it's been rechromed. I know. While we're talking about the shape, a lot of people will call it a violin shape, which makes sense. You know, it probably was meant to be more like the upright bass, but it's way smaller than an upright bass, so that would make sense. And it's actually Les Paul who believes that he's the one that inspired the shape, which might seem a little weird because his was a single cut and didn't look anything like this, but Les Paul has actually been put on record saying, I came up with that shape. So as far as the scale length is concerned, this is considered a short scale bass. This is only 30.5 inches, where the original Fender basses way back in like 51, they were 34-inch basses. So this was a short scale bass, something that would be more conducive for someone who was, say, a guitar player, maybe had shorter fingers, maybe had smaller hands, any of that. And because of that, I grew up playing this bass. Got a jazz bass, went, yeah, it just seems kind of big, and since have bought my own short scale bass because I went, yeah, this is a guitar player's bass. As far as the wood constructions, this is a mahogany body and it is a mahogany neck, and it does have its rosewood fretboard to it. Something I do want to mention is that the fret markers, you might look at these markers and go, what is that? Like paint? And once again, my dad was a working musician, so as he was playing this, he would find it hard because the dots on the top were not very prevalent. They were kind of small and they didn't go all the way up the neck. And so because of that, he went, I bet you I could put a little bit of paint on there and I could get some color and I could see it easier. And that's exactly what he did. And you know what? It works on a dark stage. A couple other things to note is these banjo tuners, which the banjo tuners themselves are pretty interesting. They do twist, and actually they've got quite a bit of play in them. This one's actually missing its screw that holds it all in there, but it does hold tune still, which is all pretty cool. The neck is huge. Like, it is a chunky neck, and I really enjoy that. Also, when we go down, you'll notice that on the back, here is the pin or the strap button for this, but I also notice an indentation right here. I don't know if you can see that at all on this camera, but there's an indentation which leads me to believe that this might have had a strap pin here at one point. So one of the things that makes this guitar so very, very cool is that there were only 105 of these made the very, very first year. And so my dad has an original. He had no idea until I looked up the serial number and said, Dad, do you realize that this was the first ever Gibson bass production that was electric? And he was like, oh, I thought it was like a 57 or a 58. And I was like, nope, actually 58, they changed it. They went to something else. And this happens to be one of the very first 105 ever made. Something I think that is really cool is that Walter Fuller and Seth Lover worked on this pickup together to make some space and also to aid in some of the low end, because it's pretty woofy being up by the neck. But one of the things they did was they actually put the screw pole pieces right here. So you've got your screw pole pieces more towards the end, which I have never seen a pickup that's really been like that, especially a single coil. Now, one of the things that you would probably notice about the originals is they had a pick guard, and this thing still has the pick guard, but it also got painted blue. Once again, I get it. Vintage instruments, oh no, but working man, no idea it was going to be worth anything. Whatever. All right. But it actually looks pretty cool, I think. You know, not so bad. Okay. But my dad didn't necessarily love it, so he had another one made. And that one was white. And that one I think looks a lot better. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it looks best without it. We do still have the original screws that went with it as well. That is, you know, that held that pick guard on, which is pretty cool too. I'm glad that he was able to hold on to some of those original things that he just doesn't use anymore. Well, I think that's enough of just kind of looking at the thing. Maybe it is time that we go ahead and try and take this thing apart a little bit. You might be like, what? Why are we taking it apart? Well, these are nickel wound strings. My dad is getting a lot older and he's finding that they're real rough on his fingers, and he wanted me to put flat wounds on it. And I think that flat wounds on a short scale bass with this big old woofy thing is awesome. So we are going to take this apart a little bit and kind of clean it up some and go ahead and put those strings back on. And while we do it, let's do a little bit of a discovery. Real quick, guitar player. Not bass guitar player, 6-string guitar player. So you're going to hear these things and go, that doesn't sound like a bass player. You're right. You're right. I put everything on 10. Let's go ahead and put it at the tone at 7. Put it at 5. So as the tone goes down, so does some of the volume. I actually like it best at around 3. I'm going to turn up the gain. And let's see how it sounds now. I'm going to go ahead and use a pick because that's the way my dad would have done it. You know what? His bass, his rules. So let's go ahead and do the same riff, just do it with a pick. I'm actually more confident with a pick too. Makes sense because I use a pick when I play guitar normally, so is what it is. All right, well, there's this beautiful looking bass right here that we've been checking out. Of course, you can see this is kind of painted black. You can see some of the brush strokes. You can see some of the brush strokes here, how it was all painted in, and really, I think this pinstriping is fantastic for what the Auto Body Shop did, which would make sense, you know. To give you a better look at those paint strokes, you can kind of see it as the light goes around it, right there. Tough to see on the pickup, but if I were to flip it over, you can definitely start to see those paint strokes on here. Yep. You know, any markings that would have been on this is probably gone by now anyway, just because of the chroming that was done. But very, very cool. Looks like this one's been broken. And that definitely feels as if it's been painted. So yeah, they just painted the inside of it. Yep, that one's the same. Oh, the stories this headstock could tell. It's the veneer, kind of real tight on there. Another chip up there. But still in good shape. Very cool. Oh, there's that evidence of it being white at one time. right there. You kind of see that white underneath that ended up on the neck. The neck is the original finish. All that really got touched was the body. I'm willing to bet that this fretboard has not been cleaned in 60 years. I want you to see this nut. That is old school. I love that old varnish that's still kind of just barely on there. So cool. Okay, let's go ahead and let's take a look inside this pickup cavity. All right, let's see if we can get this thing pried off. Got it. And look what we have here, a brown plate. So it was originally brown. This is the painted side. That's fun. All right, here it is. It is now got flat wound strings on it. Let's go ahead and play it just a little bit just to get an idea of this beautiful, beautiful bass. Well, that's about all that I have for you on this. This is a beautiful guitar. I'm so glad I got to tell its story, and I'm glad that my dad now has something that he's able to play and feel more comfortable with again. This is his old touring bass, so for him, this is going to be a little bit of nostalgia, and I'm glad I'm able to help him out with that. If you like what you heard, make sure you hit like and subscribe. Also, don't forget to ring that bell. If you want a better connection, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And remember, you are your greatest asset. Until next time.
Yeah.